recorded, and it's only being recorded for our purposes of sharing out the meeting with people who don't necessarily have access right now. So some of the things we're doing today to help be to help have a smooth meeting and to help each other be heard in this meeting is, first of all of you are entering here on Zoom on mute. Please leave it on mute. Please leave it on mute. If you need it off of mute, you can actually send me a message in chat. If everyone would look to either the bottoms of their screens that has a little chat button and click on that, or if you have the chat pulled up to the right of your screen, you can see everyone introducing themselves. So that's how we're doing our hellos today, is we're introducing ourselves. I'm Brianna, and we're typing those in. That's also where you can submit questions. If you have a question that you absolutely can't type out, you can either type to me, I have a long question, or you can hit the raise hand feature on your chat. And if you need to troubleshoot, you can always send me a message. But we have 62 people on our group today, which is amazing. But that means everyone can't talk at once. So let's please be respectful. If I have to mute you because of time concerns or too many people talking at once, I'm very sorry in advance, but I will do that. I used to be a teacher and I have zero conscience. Yeah, it's great to see everyone. Like I said, please keep it on mute. We have a couple people coming in by phone. That's great. If you can't type, if you just flag me somehow or unmute yourself, I'm going to be watching the screen. I'll be the person when we have questions for Mr. Scott, who's going to say, here's this question, and I'm just going to go in order from the chat list by however much time we have. For people whose questions we don't get to, we are going to try to answer those by email. We're going to send them to Mr. Scott. If you have a question that you can't put on the chat, please email us. If you're coming by Facebook Live, you can actually send questions that way as well, which I don't think we have Facebook Live on right now, but we're going to post this later on Facebook. So this is something that your questions will be answered. It just may take a little more patience than usual, so thank you in advance for your patience. And thank you in advance for your flexibility as we're all meeting via technology and of course have time constraints or have technology constraints. And so before we do anything else, we lost Brother Ray a couple of weeks ago, and we wanted to honor him by having a moment of silence just to remember him and thank him for his work. He was one of our coordinating committee members, and he's one of the founding members of the coalition. And he's one of the reasons that a lot of people have housing today. So we're gonna have a moment of silence for him, and then I'll see if Ashley is on, and then we'll have our spotlight. Thank you. Oh, and Larissa has a link on the Facebook page to Brother Ray's memorial next Sunday. All right, so let's have a moment of silence.
This is Zoom meeting. The Coalition for Affordable Housing.
Hi, is this Victor?
Yes.
Okay, did you, you're on, we can hear you. Yes, this is the Coalition for Affordable Housing. Is Ashley on? Ashley Kennedy?
They heard what I just said to you. They heard what I just said to you.
Okay. All right, I don't see or hear Ashley, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is the Durham Housing Authority current status of McDougald Terrace and various projects and maybe the housing bond. But we have Mr. Anthony Scott, the executive director, and Dan Hudgens is going to introduce him. So go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Brianna. Well, it's clearly my honor to introduce Anthony Scott. I was talking to Anthony last week, and it's hard to believe it's almost 4 years that he's been here. A lot's happened in those 4 years, and I can tell you as a chair of the board that probably it's the best decision we've made in terms of the future of affordable housing in Durham. Anthony came to us with years of experience, both in the nonprofit and public housing, particularly having been the Housing Authority Director in Richmond and running the Housing Authority program in Baltimore, Maryland. But he shares our vision for what we want in Durham in terms of a public housing system that does not identify our clients as separate from those who need housing in the larger community. So anything you see that we're working on is going to be mixed income and in some cases mixed use. But what I'm most proud of is, as the chair of this board, is that Anthony came during the time that I was chair, and that we had the retirement of his predecessor 2 weeks after I became the chair. So that was the first major work we did. But he probably needs a little introduction to most of us because this has to be at least the third or fourth time he's been on the program for us. So it's my pleasure to introduce Anthony. Thank you.
So once again, I guess it's good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to share my screen so I can kind of, oh, Brianna, can you allow me to share? So while she works on that, I wanted to give you guys an update of where we are with our, based on the agenda, where we are with our development plans for downtown, McDougald Terrace, and then some of the questions that I've heard about currently. I'll try to cover all of those things in my brief time here. Okay, so again, I want to cover our downtown plan, McDougald Terrace, some of our long-range plans, and then whatever time we have available for Q&A. Many of you have seen this portion of the presentation before, but this shows you how the downtown plan work is looking to roll out over the next 10 years, really. And starting out with J.J. Henderson, which is scheduled to have 2 phases. It's an existing building that's there, doing a renovation of that, as well as new construction. And then the next 3 sites that you see identified there, Odom Liberty, the DHA offices, and the Forest Hill Heights community would be the next 3. And those 3 included what the bond funding was to be used towards. And then following that is the Fayette Place site. And there's 2 other sites that the city owns that they asked us to also take a look at, and we included that in the downtown area planning work as well. One thing I want to point out is J.J. Henderson, you see a kind of circle around the 1 and the arrow, because that column there is for the 9% tax credits. And we had hoped that one of these phases would have 9% and the other would be a 4%. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It just means the 9% tax credits are deep subsidies that goes into each of these sites that allows us to keep the units more affordable. Well, unfortunately, we applied for a 9% tax credit with the state, which is a competitive grant, and we did not get it. And so one of the things about a plan is it is just a plan, and sometimes things need to change. In that instance, in order for us to keep on track, we did go back to the city and asked if we could get additional subsidy that would allow the J.J. Henderson project, both aspects of it, to stay on track, and they did agree to do that. So I'm going to quickly kind of talk about what that means. So on your left is the existing J.J. Henderson building. That building will be fully renovated from top to bottom. It currently has 177 units. They're actually technically 178. One of the units years ago had been converted to a management office. So it's 177 actual units. Those units will be renovated and remain intact. What you see on the right is a new construction building that'll be added to that J.J. Henderson site, and that's a grand total of 80 units. This is a rendering of what that'll look like. Don't react too much to that. We haven't given feedback on that yet. I'm not exactly thrilled about how that looks. I'll let you guys know that now. But that is in fact the massing of the building and what it'll look like. And just here at the top right here, you can see the existing J.J. Henderson building in the background of that. I'm going to move from J.J., which with J.J., I didn't talk about the schedule here that you see on the right. So with that schedule, you see the new construction has 80 units. There will be 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. We will look to close, that is, that we'll look to basically start the work on that property sometime at the end of this year, with construction being completed in early or mid 2022. The renovation also is going to start this year, so both will be happening simultaneously. And the renovation work also is scheduled to be completed in, I believe, the end of 2021. So the Oldham and Liberty site is the next one on the list. And this gives you an idea of what the schedule is for the Oldham Liberty site. Essentially, we've already submitted our applications for tax credit funding in January. Our full application, that is a more complete application, will be submitted at the middle of next month. And if all goes well with that, we expect to have a phase of construction underway and completed by 2023. One of the things you'll notice is that we have several overlays of projects starting and completion. So J.J. Henderson will be under construction at the same time that we're starting now Oldham Liberty. And each year we're looking to have another of these phases underway. This is a very preliminary layout of the site plan for the full Oldham and Liberty site. Main Street is here, just to orient you. This is Elizabeth Street over here on the right side. And the portion that's actually been submitted for funding is where you see phases 1 and 2. That both of those actually have been submitted for funding. They have not done as much work on phases 3 and 4, but that's just a very rough sketch of what that portion would look like. And it is far from being developed, but that just gives you a sense of the site. And it very much models the original plans that we worked on that we presented to you all over the last year or so. You notice this is phase 1 or 2. That's because we've submitted 2 applications simultaneously for this. One is geared more towards seniors and one is geared more towards families. We do not expect, in fact, it can't be that we'll get both applications funded, but we submitted 2 to raise our chances of getting an actual funded 9% application. And if we're successful in one or the other site, that's the first phase that will begin on Oldham and Liberty. So next I want to move on to McDougald Terrace, giving you an update there. So as many of you know, with McDougald Terrace, we had our first indication of some potential issues over there in December. And when we got word from Neighborhood Improvement Services, they came together along with emergency medical services, the fire department, the police department, and DHA staff, and we did sort of a sweep inspection of the entire site. Excuse me, the idea there was to try to figure out if there were issues that were going on at McDougald Terrace that we couldn't quite put our hands on. Neighborhood Improvement Service indicated that there had been several calls over the past year that potentially were carbon monoxide related. And so we just wanted to go in and see what we can figure out collectively if there were some systemic issues that might be causing some issues. That 4 days that we spent doing inspections of the units, we did find some issues with elevated carbon monoxide being emitted from either the stoves, which was the biggest issue, or the hot water heaters, or the actual heaters themselves. So there was a series of inspections that were done. We tried to fix whatever issues we found that were going on there, including replacing any missing detectors, whether it's smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors. And we were hopeful that based on that work, that we were going to be in pretty good shape. However, on January 2nd, we had a community meeting, and that very evening, I got word that there were 2 more people that got treated for elevated levels of carbon monoxide. And on January 3rd, I made the decision that we could not have confidence that all of our units were going to be safe. And so we then took emergency action to have people immediately evacuated from those units and place them into hotels. What we did after people were removed is that we looked at the ventilation system, excuse me, not the ventilation system, but the venting system for the hot water heaters and the heaters themselves, which were old, original to the building, antiquated. So we came up with a strategy of replacing that venting system completely, replacing any damaged furnaces or furnaces that did not work with new furnaces. And those new furnaces would have thermostats, which were not necessarily included in the units as they were, which caused a lot of other issues because people were complaining that the upstairs to those units were very hot because you couldn't necessarily control the heating system. You had sort of a gauge there, but you couldn't control it by an exact temperature like most other heating systems. So we replaced all the furnaces throughout with thermostats now. We wanted to get away from gas stoves altogether and switch over to electric stoves. So that was part of the plan. We also had to upgrade the electric in doing so. And we also took on looking at environmental issues such as fungal growth and had that remediated. In some of the cases, we had insect infestation, and that also was remediated. The city and county building inspections department oversaw all of the work that was done by licensed contractors. The neighborhood improvement services oversaw all of the work that was necessary for code enforcement. So that was environmental concerns, primarily dealing with the fungal growth and dealing with insect issues. So all of those were signed off by those 2 departments before they would be cleared for any families to go back to McDougald Terrace. So over the last 3 months, that has taken up an enormous amount of our time in trying to address the issues associated with families being in hotels, such as transportation, providing them with food, making sure that the schools were picking people up from the hotels, picking up the kids from the hotels and getting them to school, and everything in between. So that has taken up a lot of staff time over the last 3 months. But we're happy to report that as of last week, we have all but, I believe, 3 families have been relocated back to McDougald Terrace. The work that was, yeah, trust me, we feel the same way. The work that had been done and signed off on did not mark a completion of all work that was necessary at McDougald. So we will still continue to do additional repairs over the next 90 days to get those units to better shape than what they are now. the issues that were addressed were immediate health and safety issues, but there's still a lot of other work that we'll be continuing to do over the next 90 days.
Mr. Scott,
Yes. Hey, Jackie.
you said that y'all mitigated the fungal and the mold
Correct.
problem. How
Yeah.
was that? How was that done?
We
What-
had a.
I'm kind of interested in.
I'm sorry, Jackie. So that last part
How
again.
was that mitigation done? What did that look like? Because I know, I be over there a lot, and I know y'all had a lot of stuff on, but I need to understand how was the fungal and the mold. I guess that would be a combination because it was water damage and mold and bug infestation. How was that? Was that separate entities, each one done? And out of the, what is it, over 300 occupied units over there, have all of them been passed by NIS, and is there reports that the public can actually put their hands on?
So all units had to be passed by neighborhood improvement services before any families could move back. So the fact that all those families have moved back, that meant that those have been cleared by neighborhood improvement services for that environmental work. And similar on the building inspection department cleared the mechanical work, the plumbing work. That all was cleared before any resident could be moved back. So the environmental work was done by a variety of contractors who came in and did cleaning, indoor removal of that. There were some units that had more severe issues where, they had to go and check and make sure there was nothing going on behind walls and things like that. So all of that work was being done and overseen by the neighborhood improvement services.
Everyone, just a reminder, please put your questions in the chat. Thank you, Mr. Scott. We will get to you, and please leave your videos on mute. Thank you.
Okay, so just wrapping up, because I want to make sure I had as much time as possible for questions. So a couple of other items I wanted to go over is there was a question about a moratorium on evictions. And so I wanted to clarify that there was an effort by a group to have a moratorium on evictions through the winter months. That is not something that DHA agreed to. We think that the policy that we currently have, where we stress to residents that if you are having trouble paying your rent, please come to DHA, and we will not file based on that. If it is an issue of you having an inability to pay. However, because of COVID-19, the HUD has put out a 120-day moratorium on evictions. And we're still waiting for some clarity around what that truly means. I mean, we know that that's the case, but we don't know some of the details because HUD will often come back and clarify later. But with respect to any filings for evictions, there's a 120-day moratorium on that. And we will follow the guidance or specifics that HUD puts out for housing authorities who are under that moratorium. Someone also asked about upcoming capital projects, the roofs at Hoover Road and Cornwallis. Those contracts have been signed in the last few weeks, so we expect that work to begin in the next less than 30 days on both of those sites. We also have capital work going on Laurel Oaks, which is a RAD conversion, meaning it just switches from the traditional public housing funding source to the housing choice voucher funding source. But there's renovation work that's ongoing with that site, and that is expected to be completed within about 3 to 4 months. And prior to all of what occurred with McDougald Terrace, we were planning on a portfolio-wide capital plan that is looking at all of our properties, determining in a priority sort of way what work needed to be done at which site, and then sort of planning that out over the next 5 years or more, depending on how much money we get, how much capital money we get. The downtown plan that we've rolled out actually allows us to spend more money towards the capital plan because those sites have very specific plans for them that includes renovation and or rebuilding. And so we will maintain those properties to spend what capital dollars we need, but we don't have to plan for the longer term capital expenditures on those sites because those sites are going to be renovated in the near future. So I believe that's my last slide. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Brianna, excuse me.
All right, everyone. We have a few questions. If you can continue to please type your questions into the chat. I am checking the chat constantly so that everyone can be heard. There are 99 of us on here, so we cannot all talk at once. We absolutely can't do that. That's not fair to everyone. We have over 100 participants, which is great. So, Mr. Scott, our first question, if you give me just a second, is how will DHA prioritize access to greenscape and landscaping? COVID is showing that the poor often do not have access to outside spaces near their homes. And as parks close down, the disparity is becoming worse. And that also includes specifically with J.J. Henderson, issues with green space and parking.
I just unshared your screen, but in all of our development work, we do have an emphasis on creating green space. So when you look at the plans that we have for the downtown planning work, all of that includes green space. I believe we're actually incorporating well over 100,000 square feet of additional green space for each of those sites. That is a big priority for us, including greenscaping, trees, etc. So that's always an important part of what we do.
Great, thank you. And then second question is why the 9% LIHTC? Why wasn't that funded?
The 9% tax credits are a competitive program. And Durham only is allowed one site per year at best, but sometimes we don't get any, which was the case last year. So it's a competitive process. We put our application in, we put forth the best application we can, but at the end of the day, what happens is that the state will rank those projects and the top one gets funded, and until they run out of money, that's when they stop funding. I think we were one short of getting funded last year.
Okay. Next question. When does or did the HUD issued 120-day moratorium start?
The exact date I don't recall, but it's been as a result of COVID-19. So it's been in the last 30 days.
Okay. And then where are J.J. Henderson residents being relocated during renovation?
Residents will actually be on site during renovation. So the way the renovation will work is that they'll do a section of the building at a time. I believe they're going to go vertically at a time. And so we have vacancies there now. That was part of the overall strategy. We allow vacancies to occur through attrition, and so that residents will not have to move, but hopefully just one time. So they'll start work on the building in those units. Once those are completed, then residents will start to move and they clear out another section, and it'll continue until the whole building is complete.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How has the coronavirus and the need for social distancing impacting the topics you talked about, Mr. Scott?
Well, the primary issue has been that we, like almost everyone, have been operating remotely. So our DHA office, for example, is essentially closed. Our management offices are essentially closed. We are only doing emergency repair work, and maintenance staff are still doing site work, and they're spending their time also cleaning the buildings for the public spaces that are required, such as at J.J. Henderson or Oldham Towers. They're making sure that those buildings are sanitized at least 2 to 3 times a day.
All right, thank you. All right, next question is from Antonio Jones. What is the plan for relocating residents with the Liberty Street plan? And how is Durham Public Schools included in planning implementation?
When we began the planning work for the downtown sites, we included all city and county departments, including DPS. As we get closer, we will, in fact, we were hoping to schedule a meeting with them to get everybody up to speed on where we were, but of course, everybody's been quarantined. So we continue to try to communicate all of what's happening with the various departments, transportation, planning, schools, et cetera, around where we are and what we're doing. With respect to how we're going to handle the relocation, that is going to be developed once we're more clear about how we need to do the tear down of the buildings. So that'll be in part based on which site we get an award for. And then we'll have to look at a relocation plan that fits that. It's difficult to project a relocation plan until we know for sure what construction we're going to do and when. But the relocation will happen within existing DHA properties.
Okay, thanks. All right, next question is from Alexis Clark. How quickly can, oh, hang on, it scrolled down. How quickly can DHA adjust lower rent for its residents? Presumably many people have lost work or lost hours at work. Can this rent be reduced retroactively for March 2019 when the effects of COVID start to take hold or have started to take hold?
Yes, the way rent adjustments typically work, residents let us know that they've lost income and we can make adjustments to their rents immediately. It's not a burden for us to do that. And similarly on the housing choice voucher side, because people don't always think about that too, where residents are paying a portion of their income towards rent. If they lose income, then we actually pay more of the rent for that particular family. And I will say on the other side of that, one of the difficulties is we have a set budget for our voucher program. Let's just say it's $20 million and we have 800 people, I'm just making up numbers. We have $20 million, we have 800 people that we're spending that $20 million for based on their current income. You can imagine what would happen. Let's just say half of those people lost their jobs. That means we're now having to pay more money towards their rent. So that means that we are going to run out of that $20 million much, much faster. So part of what happened with the CARES Act is that it did include money in there to help housing authorities make up the gaps of unforeseen costs associated with the COVID-19.
Thank you. All right. This is from John. What has DHA learned about the transportation needs of McDougald Terrace residents from the period when they were relocated and provided with some private shuttle transit?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I can say that from the beginning, we did have private transportation to assist people in getting from initially from McDougald to the hotels. We also made it available for people who had needed doctor's appointments and things of that nature. So beyond that, I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think his question was just, what have you learned about the needs of transportation for your residents during that time? Yeah.
Yeah, well, again, I think we know that transportation is, as we are here talking from the Housing and Transportation Coalition, we know that transportation throughout the city is always a challenge. One of the things that we did, or at least I did early on in coming here, is to try to understand for the number of people that were coming to our offices on Main Street, how many of them were using public transit or using private transportation or their own transportation, and also asked, do they find that transportation to or from our offices is a problem? And the large majority of people were saying they didn't find that that was a problem. It didn't mean that it wasn't a struggle. It just meant that they weren't finding it as being difficult to get to and from our offices. But I can tell you that part of what we learned in having people live in those hotels was that it was difficult for them to tie back into the transportation systems that they did have out of McDougald Terrace. Some kids, for example, didn't go to DPS schools. So for them to get from their hotel to their school often took kind of two steps because their transportation came to McDougald Terrace. And so it was not going to go to the hotels, but we had to get them to McDougald and then from McDougald to their schools. So we learned a lot about the challenges that folks have around transportation.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Cynthia, I'm going to combine both your questions. Mr. Scott, these are long, just so you know.
I'm not going.
So we have COVID-19 closed many schools and businesses. Access to and use of broadband has become a significant resource during this pandemic. What is DHA's plan for providing access to broadband and in these renovations? Will there be an opportunity to introduce cell mesh networks and provide access at low cost to DHA in the city of Durham? And then also asked, what's being done to provide the housing residents with personal protection equipment and disinfectants to keep their homes sanitized? Is there money in the stimulus package to fund these needs? That having been said, also, I'd like to just add to that, Mr. Scott, that my church and a couple of other organizations are organizing so that we can get masks to people who need them. And so that's a resource DHA also has. Yeah.
That is excellent. I'll definitely follow up with you about that. So there are two things in this crisis. One, folks have to realize that the DHA does its best to connect into partners like the school system and the city and the county, but there's limitations in what we're able to do, both in terms of budget and staffing. We have, for the longest while, since I've been here, before I got here actually, have been working with trying to get broadband at our sites. There was an effort by the city of Durham to install fiber lines across the city. And we worked with the city that they committed to providing fiber to all of our housing communities. The work on that started. It paused for a while. I'm not sure where it is today. But one of the things that we're going to do is make sure that once those fiber lines are installed, that all of our communities will have access to broadband. We've also talked with the state's technology, I think it's a department, and they're going to work with us in terms of making that broadband access available free to all of our families. Because we have a sort of centralized hub, say at our management office, but then we sort of broadcast that out, almost like how a hotel will allow anybody to connect into the broadband. That's the plan that we have. We're just working with the city, which is a partnership with Duke, on getting those fiber lines installed. We also, around the school closings, Spectrum announced that they will provide free internet access to any family that has school-age children. So we've tried to put the word out to let people know that Spectrum is making broadband access available to any of those families. One of the things that's kind of interesting is that we don't know, and I'm not 100% sure, staff is looking into this in terms of what DPS is doing to provide the schooling through broadband measures, or is it, because my understanding they were giving out homework packets, but they weren't necessarily doing things online. And of course, we're getting very close to the end of school year anyway, so I'm not sure where DPS is ultimately going to land on that.
All right, thank you. So this is a question from Mary. The public housing has received failing scores for health and safety. Is there a numeric goal for the renovation of McDougald Terrace to get the residents up to acceptable scores?
You mean in terms of a score number when you say numeric goal?
Yeah.
Well, the bottom line is that a 60 is considered passing. So our goal is by the time they do the next set of inspections, which will be actually next spring, because they typically do ours in the spring, we expect that all of our sites will have passing scores. And frankly, a 60 is not something that's even the goal, because that is rather low on a scale of 100. When I talked a little earlier about our capital plan so that we could look at doing capital work across all of our sites, that was in fact the intention. We would expect it to have been well into that by now, but we obviously got a little sidetracked with McDougald Terrace first and then COVID second. One of the things we're hopeful for is that as the federal government is looking at providing stimulus money, there's talk about an infrastructure proposal. We have been advocating, when I say we, the housing industries have been advocating that housing authorities are included in infrastructure funding so that we can actually get enough money to do some significant upgrades to our properties.
Thank you. Okay, I have two questions that were submitted via email early on. And then I will get to Gwen's question and Antonio's other question. How are the specific sites for redevelopment from the bond fund picked? As some of the DHA housing appears to be in worse physical shape, was there a reason not to start with them first? So that's the first question, and then I'll move to the second question.
Right. So I've kind of addressed a little bit of that earlier, where I said that the thing is that we started with the downtown sites because those are sites that are in the hottest real estate market. And they also will allow us to leverage what we earn from those developments to use that for the other sites. When you look at the needs for Oldham Towers, Liberty Street, and Forest Hill Heights, and JJ, I'm looking, I think those are about $9 or $10 million. I'm looking at my sheet. It's about $9 or $10 million of capital funds that those sites say that they need. Now that we have a plan for those, we won't need to spend that $9 or $10 million on those sites, but we can actually push those dollars, or a good portion of those dollars, to the other communities that are going to have longer range development plans. The cost of trying to do a redevelopment of these sites is quite high. The bigger the site, obviously, the bigger the cost. And when you think about McDougald Terrace, which is 360 units, although only 346 are occupiable, you have 25 acres there. To do a large redevelopment plan for that site would take, probably, well, I don't even want to speculate a number, but it'll be tens of millions of dollars to do that work. And so we came up with a plan that will allow us to get work done in the downtown area, and we can use that to leverage to do the work in the other sites that are going to be much, much more expensive to do.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Has DHA considered allowing the city to move forward with a public-private partnership to develop Fayette Place, since it is not included in the bond fund?
Well, all of the sites that are in the downtown development plan, we're actually going to be releasing a new RFP probably, or RFQ, which means a request for proposals or request for qualifications, and invite any interested developers to take a look at those sites in partnership with DHA. So even though we have this very linear process that's laid out, it does not mean that we're going to take a linear approach. We are definitely interested in development of the Fayette Place site as well as the others as soon as possible. We're going to see what partners are interested in development of those sites. And if we have strong interest to begin now, then we'll actually begin the development of those sites sooner than what that plan shows. But I want to make sure you keep in mind that 9% tax credit challenge with this, though. So there's only 9% tax credit that can be awarded in the city of Durham per year. The reason why that plan goes out over 10 years is because it's 10 phases of 9% tax credits. So that's one of the bigger drivers for us in this, is the ability to get enough subsidy, which comes from those 9% tax credits, that allows us to get the lower income units, because we want mixed income, yes, but in order for us to have units that are going to be affordable to 30% below, the 9% tax credit is the most important financing portion of that. And that's going to drive our ability to keep those units very, very low.
All right, Mr. Scott, I have one quick question, one longer question, and we only have about 5 more minutes for questions. I see you, Miss Jackie, but these people have been waiting a while, so if you could type me your question. If I can't answer it on the video call, I'll definitely get it answered to you via email. But I see you.
Can I please read my question, because I left out, I have like a typo error that.
Yeah, so I'm going to read Antonio's question first, just because he's right before you. And
Okay.
then Ms. Gwen, I'll let you read your own question. All right, so Antonio just wants to know, when and how will residents be notified to vacate during construction? Will they receive 30, 60, 90, or 120 days notice to allow proper planning?
Vacating for what purpose?
I guess when they move for the RAD. planning?
I see.
Yeah.
They'll have plenty of notice. I don't know what the time frame is, but it'll be probably 4 or 6 months, something like that.
Okay, great.
Not more.
All right, Miss Gwen.
Hi. In September of 2019, Durham CAHT held a public accountability action with Mr. Anthony Scott to discuss several unacceptable issues affecting the residents of the Hoover Road community. At that time, Mr. Scott made commitments to make repairs to resident units that included replacement of the roofs. At the December DHA Board of Commissioners meeting, funding of the project was approved. What is the current status of the Hoover Road and Cornwallis Road roof repairs to resident units, as well as other external and internal unit repairs of all DHA properties?
Okay, so I mentioned the roofs of Cornwallis and McDougald. Those contracts were recently signed. They should be starting work within the next 30 days or less. And the other repairs I talked about as well, that we are developing an overall plan for our public housing communities. The challenge is, of course, for much of that, we're going to need capital funds to do so. And we'll put together a plan that will show, here is what all of our sites need. And then we'll have to prioritize based on that, based on the amount of money that we have.
Thank you. All right, Miss Jackie, go for it.
Yes, Mr. Scott. One question. How many residents do we currently have still residing in the hotels out of the 346 that were moved out?
As of today, I'm told we have 3 families that are remaining in the hotels.
Great, and I think that also answers Ms. Cheryl's question as well. So that's 2 questions at once. Thank you. All right, I think we have time for one more question. So let me see, make sure I have the next one on the list. This is from Nadia. Do you have funds left over from the funds received for temporary relocation of McDougald Terrace residents? If so, will those funds be applied to assist families during the pandemic? If so, how? If not, how will any remaining funds be used?
We don't have any remaining funds. In fact, we haven't even received any funds at all for the relocation work as of yet. So that's in process. What I was working on before the call, and that's what I'll be working on after the call.
Okay. And in that case, we have one more question since we have time. That was a short answer. Where can the public access a full accounting of the money spent on housing displaced residents from McDougald Terrace, as well as the money spent for security, appliances, plumbing, electrical, pest control, and any other renovation work completed? What specific work has not yet been completed that's in plan, which you answered a little bit already? And what are the actual numbers of people displaced by date and the numbers that you have been able to return home by date? Also, I might send that one to you in email, Mr. Scott, in case you want to do the exact dates.
Yeah, so we don't have all of that information compiled yet. It's actually part of what's happening with our grant, but the projected numbers are somewhere around $9.5 million. It's well, just say 9 million, because I think some of that we didn't end up having to spend for the work. And that's half of that roughly is money for the relocation. That is hotels, transportation, security, stipends that we provided to families. And the other half is for the actual work that was done, as I described earlier. So the projected funds, the projected expenses around that, once again, is around $9 million. And as soon as we haven't even finished yet, but as soon as we get finished, we'll have a full accounting of all of that. And as I said, I'm literally working on responses to HUD now that are including the compilation of those expenditures.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Scott. Everyone whose questions were not answered, I will send an email, or one of us will send an email with the transcript and the questions to Mr. Scott. If you have more questions, please continue to type them in the group chat so that I can record those questions and send those via email. And we will endeavor to get those answered for you as soon as possible. And Mr. Scott's really good about that. So thank you for your time, Mr. Scott. And thank you everyone for taking turns and just really helping with this process and helping it go smoothly right now. I'm going to turn it over to John, who is giving us is starting us off on our updates.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Can someone give a thumbs up that you can hear me? Thank you. We had begun efforts in partnership with several other organizations, the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People, People's Alliance, El Centro Hispano, and the Durham Congregations in Action to and Bike Durham, I'm executive director there, to put together an event around the transit plan and developing a common agenda to advocate for making sure that the Durham County Transit Plan is prioritizing the needs of the most transportation disadvantaged in our community. Obviously, the COVID-19 stay-at-home order has put a pause on that, and so we're have been waiting for that to lift before we continue scheduling that and having that event. In the meantime, we have been working to put forward proposals and calls for the city to make sure that they're protecting the transit workers and customers, riders of Go Durham, Go Triangle services during this period. We've also been fortunate to get masks from Covering the Triangle and have distributed 500 on last Friday. I've got another box in front of me. We're going to distribute 700 this afternoon. So we continue to do some work to both lift up the needs of transit workers and transit riders during this time, and then soon we'll get back to organizing the work around the longer term needs of people in Durham. And if because there are so many on the call, if there are others who are interested in being involved with this work, I will put my email address into the chat box and feel free to reach out to me and we'll include you in upcoming organizing meetings.
Thank you, John. Now we have an update from Wib.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to have so many people joining this meeting, and appreciate the very helpful, informative presentation. I wanted to just talk for a moment about the former police headquarters site at 505 East West Chapel Hill Street. Even in the time of the pandemic, the negotiations between the developer and the city have moved forward. There's a development plan that's sort of a rough first initial cut at what it would look like that has been developed. It went to the Planning Commission. They commented on it. It will likely go to the City Council. It's planned later this month in the second cycle this month, but we'll see if that holds because everything is slowed down with the virus. The key thing for us has been the 80 units of affordable housing at 60% AMI or less. And that is going to be safeguarded in what are called restrictive covenants. That'll be filed with the deed and run with the land forever, basically, and will require that there be 80 units, that they be at 60% or lower AMI, so they're affordable 20, 40, 50, 60, 100 years from now. The developer's concerned about how to finance that, and that's what's being worked through. But I just wanted to report to people that's where things stand. We're staying on it. We're happy to be working with Ken and several other, the Durham Committee, other folks about trying to monitor that situation. And we'll let everybody know if it's coming to the City Council later this month or when it does come. Thank you, Bree.
Thank you, Wib. And finally, we have Jim Savara to talk about the tax assistance. Jim, are you unmuted?
Yes. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. We have been continuing to push forward the proposal for a property tax assistance program that would set a limit on the percent of income that would be paid by low-income, long-term homeowners in property tax to the city and county. We have gotten favorable responses from elected officials, but there was also a clear indication that the total financial impact of the program was going to be difficult to meet under the strained conditions and now dealing with the pandemic as well. So the sponsoring organizations, the coalition coordinating committee and the People's Alliance board have approved some adjustments in the approach that we had approved 2 months ago in order to reduce the fiscal impact. The biggest changes are to eliminate from the program coverage for families above 60% of the area median income, the 61 to 80% area median income group. We also have increased the residency requirement from 5 years to 10 years to make certain that we're helping real long-term homeowners and not perhaps new families that have moved into gentrifying areas. With those changes, we will reduce the impact on the city and county substantially. It is a time, let me go over the changes then, the qualifications. One, the income qualification would be under 30% would pay 1% of their income in taxes, up to 60% would pay 2% of their income. That would be the limit. The additional tax bill would be covered by a grant from the city and county that would be paid directly to the county tax administration office. And so for hopefully this can be included in the budget for the upcoming fiscal year, so that for bills that are being distributed later this year, that relief would be available. We are also going to provide immediate eligibility for families that meet the income limits, but who are elderly or handicapped. The length of time they have had in their home would not be the 10-year period. In addition, persons who have acquired their home through an affordable housing program, such as Habitat, would also be eligible immediately for the tax assistance. It is still part of the proposal that families that pass on the home to another family member would be able to take advantage of the tax assistance grant if they met the income limits. Our plan is to be reaching out to elected officials in the next in the rest of April to get ready as budget hearings begin in May. If anyone has questions or comments, I'd be happy to receive them, or you could type them in under comments.
Thank you, Jim. All right, so just to give you an update on future meeting items, future events tomorrow, April 21st from 10 to 11 a.m. Larissa has the link for this meeting, but there will be a virtual meeting with the Department of Social Services Director, Ben Rose, specifically about rental assistance. And if you look at the rest of the events and meetings, there's a special city council meeting on April 24th. The technical committee meeting is not meeting this month. First coordinating committee meeting is on first Mondays, and Becky will have the link to join the meeting. And then our next monthly meeting will be on a third Monday, so that will be Monday, May 18th at noon. And I will more than likely be the person hosting that meeting again. So if you have any feedback or questions, please let me know. I feel like everyone's done a great job helping to make this meeting run smoothly. And of course, email us any comments or questions you have about anything that happened in the meeting, and we will post this recorded video as soon as we can and email links through that. Thank you. Any final questions really quickly? All right, thank you all and have a great day. Take care.